episode 17.
Welcome to Men of Abundance, the podcast for those looking to level up their lives by hanging out with some of the greatest leaders and established professionals in our community, living a life of integrity, honor, and the abundance mentality. Prepare to pay it forward with your host, former Army medic turned lifestyle entrepreneur, Wally Carmichael.
Hey, what's up, Men of Abundance? Today we have a very interesting conversation with Jeff. You are not going to believe why and how Jeff walked away from a six-figure income job, basically a job that was very easy, and that's part of the reason why he walked away, and you'll find out about that as we get into the conversation. But first, I want to make sure that you all know that you can get involved in the conversation by going to the show notes of this show at menofabundance.com/017 and click on the link to get involved in this conversation. Or you can simply go to Facebook and type in Men of Abundance Community and look for the free group. Click on the green join button and I'll give you access so that you can get involved in the conversation. And I truly appreciate you sharing this Men of Abundance podcast with everybody else. Alright, so Jeff Smith is one interesting character to say the least. As you'll find out, he was in the Air Force for 20 years. He's lived all over the world. We talk a little bit about that. And when Jeff took off his uniform, he worked 2 high-salary jobs as a DoD contractor for 3 years. Then we're going to get into why he walked away from that high-paying job to finish his bachelor's degree in psychology. What he did after that is kind of funny, actually. And then he went into massage school and learned about trigger point therapy. He talks a little bit about why he walked away from that job as well. And then Jeff and I kind of go off on all kinds of interesting conversations. And I think you're going to enjoy this episode. So let's get right into it. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Wally. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, man, this is definitely my pleasure. When I was looking around, and I was looking around your site, and I saw the name of your site. I was like, what on earth is this about? What is this podcast? And the name of
Thank you, branding guys.
What's that?
I said, thank you, branding guys.
Yeah, it is intriguing, right? And I'm like, vroom, vroom, veer. What is this? It pulled me in.
What
it just
the
pulled
hell
me
is
in.
that?
Yeah, and then I take a look at it, and I'm like, about Jeff. Oh, this guy's he's one of me. He's one of me. He's
a veteran.
He's one of me. Yeah, and I mean, you've been to Japan, Hawaii, Florida, back to Japan, England, and Los Angeles. And the only place I haven't been out of that lineup is England, and it's definitely on my bucket list. You liked it there?
Oh yeah. It's it's not perfect, but it's still a fun place to be. Yeah, and you have access to Europe real cheap. So
yeah. I had a guest on my show who's in the UK, and he gets in and around London and and around England and all that stuff. And he was talking about how now that things have changed a little bit, travel out that way is not as easy as it was in the past, or it's not going to be anyway.
Right. Yeah, everybody's freaking out about the Brexit stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and he gave his point of view as well. But
right.
Yeah, I'm definitely wanting to get down around those parts. I've been all over Europe as well. So you're in Los Angeles now.
I am.
How's that working out?
I am ready to get out of LA, tell you the truth. And that's going to be part of my kick in the gut story / enough is enough moment.
Perfect. We'll get into that. I have been to LA. Right. I've been around around California. LA is not my favorite place to be.
Here's the thing is people, I don't want to crap on LA because it is great, right? It's just, you being military, you'd understand what I'm talking about. It's my wife and I really got hooked on moving, and we've been here since 2003. Yes. And we were ready to move 3 years later.
Yes, my wife and I are the same exact way, man.
Exactly. I don't, so it's just basically been a Hotel California situation. We can't figure out how to leave.
Hey, you know what?
I'm working on it.
We are so much more alike than you think because my wife and I, we're used to moving every 3 to 4 years for the last 24, 25 years. And about 5 years in, about 4 years in, and after I retired, I've been retired from active duty a little over a year, and we got the bug to move again. Thank you. And we've been trying to. It's just terrible to say. We've been trying to get out of here, and then something will happen that'll like, no, let's just stick it out. Let's stay a little bit longer, because
it's
this
hard
great
to
thing
move
happened.
when you're now not, you don't have orders flowing down telling you where to go and to salute smartly and comply. It's difficult. It's a completely different mindset.
It really is. It really is. But there's so many places that we want to go and we can go. Right. It's just something will happen. I'll get a promotion or something great will happen, or let's wait till our oldest gets done with high school.
There's always a reason to stay.
And here we are stuck in paradise, and nobody wants to hear my sob story.
Yeah, you're in Hawaii. Shut up. And people say the same thing to me. Oh, wow, you're in LA.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So before we got started, I gave a little bit about you. I talked a little bit about you and your background, but I want to hear from you. Let's get a little bit personal. Let's hear about where you've come from. What's gotten you to where you're at today, and then we'll get into the show.
All right. So, how much brevity are we looking for here? Do we want broad strokes?
Yeah, just broad strokes. We don't want to get directly into your, all your good stuff.
So, like you said, I was in the Air Force for 20 years, and you know what that's like. You were in the military. You were in the Army 25 years, so similar experiences, lots of travel and fun. Mm-hmm. And then I retired in 2008, okay? And I immediately, while I was still on terminal leave, started my first defense contractor job, right? Just because you could. Somebody came up to me, was a buddy, another former retired master sergeant, and said, would you like to do this job for this much money? And I went, yeah.
Of course. And that's exactly how it works.
Yeah. I'm like, that sounds like so easy, right? So I spent about a year and a half in that job, basically, and it was like impossible to get the smile off my face, right? Because I was not in the military anymore. Mm-hmm. I was just, I love the military. I was just ready to be done at that point. So after that year and a half, that same buddy came and said to me, I think it's time to make another move. And I'm like, I'm listening. And he's like, you could get another job for doing less work for this much more money a year. And I'm like, yeah. So I took that job, and that job lasted probably about almost 2 years, just about 2 years. And it was fun, but then towards the end, it was like mind-numbingly dull. And that's when I kind of had this moment where I was like, I could do this. I could really keep this ball rolling until I was like, 70 if I wanted to, But I needed to make some sort of change because it just felt like I was kind of sleepwalking through life. That was like the experience that I was going through. So after much debate and deliberation and negotiation with my spouse, I quit that job, just walked away from a big, healthy paycheck and decided to go back to school and use my post 9/11 GI Bill money and finish my bachelor's degree, and then also screw around and go to massage school for about 3 years. So, and then after that, I joined Podcasters Paradise in 2014. And that's kind of like where the kick in the gut story starts, because that's where I did 2 podcasts. So this is my 3rd overall podcast, but the first one I started had an all screwed up brand. So I had to, that was kind of like the, kick in the gut number 1 was build this show, spend all this time, do about a year's worth of shows and go, yeah, I didn't get the brand right. So that was kind of a kick in the gut.
Well, let's get into that. Let's get into that first kick in the gut where you felt that, you wanted to get into podcasting. So you got your education. Were you done at that point with your education? And then what got you into Podcasters Paradise? What sucked you into all that?
Well, I had, like I said, I finished a bachelor's degree in psychology, but what I really learned was I didn't want a job in psychology. That's what I got out of getting a bachelor's degree in psychology. And then, like I said, I did try, and I worked in a spa for a while as a massage therapist. It was a fun enough job, but just overall not a great work experience. The doing of the massage, that's awesome. I mean, it's really cool to get paid to do something like that. But it just doesn't pay right, and they don't treat you well. But anyway, so I decided that I would get back into IT, right? So about that same time, I was doing a temp job. I worked the temp job at LAX doing a PC migration where they were moving from XP to Windows. And so while I was doing that job, I was also listening to Pat Flynn and Entrepreneur on Fire and thinking, people are making money at podcasts. I can do this. I want to do this. So that's when I started doing that. I quit that job and started driving for Lyft, which is kind of like Uber, right? Yeah. Just to keep mama happy.
That's always important, man.
That's right. So I could, make a little bit of money and work on the podcast. So that first podcast, I did that for about a year. Okay. And then I think probably around December 14, do you know Michael O'Neill of the Solopreneur Hour?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So he did a beta class, okay? And in that class with him, I had one of those aha moments, which was the kick in the gut moment, where I realized that first podcast just wasn't going to work brand-wise.
What was the name of the brand of that first podcast?
That was called Dink Lifestyle Business. Yeah, let that sit for a while.
Yeah, I'm trying to... Okay, let me wrap my head around that one, but okay, we'll move on from there.
Dink stands for dual income, no kids.
Okay.
And then lifestyle business is just kind of like trying to work from home, all right?
Oh. So I like that. That makes sense. But then it's like John Lee Dumas always says, when you're thinking of a name, be clever or be clear.
Right.
And if you got to pick one of the two, be clear.
Right.
It's very clever, but it wasn't very clear.
It wasn't very, very clear. Right. Yeah. And the thing is dink, it was a term. It's more like was a term.
Yes.
Right. And now nobody knows what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah, and I do.
Yeah. Right. But as the thing is we didn't really talk about being a dink. I was basically recording shows that were under the brand of Vroom Vroom Veer. We just called it Dink Lifestyle Business. We didn't talk, nobody wanted to say anything about being a dink. So it had nothing to do, the show had nothing to do with the title of the show.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
Right? So that's a bad idea. Maybe it would be a good idea for somebody that wants to, talk to people that are dual income, no kids. Right. But I wasn't really interested in that. So it wasn't necessarily bad. It was just bad for me.
So thanks to podcasts like Michael O'Neill, and was Michael O'Neill doing the Solopreneur? Is that where you got the idea? Okay.
Yeah. And he did a class, and I took one of his classes in beta. So it wasn't available to the public. He was just sending it out to his list at that point. So, So then I shut down that podcast, and then again, through Michael, I hired some branding folks and did about an 8-week branding engagement, and that's where Vroom Vroom Veer came from, right? I would have never came up with Vroom Vroom Veer by myself, right? It's perfect, I love it, but I would have never come up with it myself. So now I've built that out, and it's a little over a year. So I started Vroom Vroom Veer in May of 15, and I've been doing that and slowly getting better, and it's picking up a little bit of steam, but that really kind of brings me to kick in the gut number 2, really. And that moment was, do you ever listen to the Tim Ferriss podcast?
Oh, yes. I really dig listening to Tim Ferriss.
Tim Ferriss is great.
Yes, he's got some long shows, though, but he's got great content, great information.
You know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of a real-life version of Buckaroo Banzai.
Yeah. Well, he's done so much, and he's mastered so many skills. It's just blows my mind.
He's a nerd, too.
He is totally a nerd.
And that's I was a nerd, too. I played D&D, so,
nerds rule the world, man.
I know. Yeah, it's cool to be a nerd now, which is weird.
It is, right? What a paradigm shift.
Right. So anyway, Tim Ferriss. So here I am. The moment was, and I don't know when this happened, but I remember the moment because I was listening to Tim Ferriss's podcast, and he did this thing about, how to build an audience for a podcast. These are the steps you need to take, right? But he caveated it. He said, first off, why do you want to? Because it's a pain in the ass. Mm-hmm. Especially if you want to make money. Now, if you just want to do it as a hobby because you think it might be fun and you'll meet interesting people, then fine, go ahead and do it. But if you want to make money doing it, then you're going to need to have an audience, and you're probably going to need that audience to come quick, so then you can have ad revenue, so you're going to need to do these things, right? And the kick in the gut was really that I decided at that moment that I didn't want to do those things, and if I had to do those things, I think I'd rather just get a job, right? So that was kind of a big deal. So at that moment, I denied it for months. Like, we most of us do. I was in denial of that fact that, I really didn't want to do those things that would, it would take to become a paying, a for-profit sort of podcast business.
Right.
I didn't want to do that, but I did want to have a podcast. So it was sort of like a mind shift. It was like, okay, I need to put this in the hobby over here box in my brain, and then really dedicate myself to finding a job that will make me happy for the next 20 years or so, right? Mm-hmm. So that's about where I'm at right now.
Okay, and yeah, that makes a lot of sense too, because I'm kind of the opposite when it comes to my podcast, because I did, when I first heard about the concept, and I started my podcast for a different reason. Really, I kind of started my podcast for a different reason, and that was because of the book that I wanted to write, and I kind of had imposter syndrome. And another podcaster I was listening to said that he started a conference because he wanted to get an association with all of these people that were doing what he wanted to do.
Oh,
so,
right.
Yeah, so he started the Freedom Fastlane conference, and it was in Austin, Texas. And I thought, what a great idea to be able to pull people together. And then I ran into John Lee, which, was doing the podcasting, and he had the free podcast course. And I started listening to that, and I was like, well, I will do that. That's how I will get people to talk to me, because I'll have an audience. And since then, I've talked to people on the show that otherwise probably wouldn't have given me that much one-on-one time and talk about this type of stuff, right? So, But here's the thing for me is when I did not realize how much work it took to get it to do the podcast. I love the interview part. Yeah.
Right.
The interview part's great, but the editing and the marketing and everything else behind it that nobody else sees in, a 30 to 40 minute show is hours for one show.
It's hours. Yeah.
Especially when you're just learning.
Yes, it gets better. Once you get it down, and you get your competency up, then it goes a lot quicker. But it's still work. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not work. It just goes faster. Once you get better at it.
Yeah, and it is already getting better. I've already learned some shortcuts. I finally learned a lot of different shortcuts. So anyway.
Yeah. So I guess that would probably your enough moment, enough is enough pivot moment would be that decision, right? To go ahead and dedicate myself really to getting a job, right? So again, I struggled with that quite a bit, like kind of half-assing the whole job search thing. Here's the thing, what this is like. I don't know what you're like in retirement, but like right now, I've almost taken my wife's role, which is, a little emasculating to say, but like my job is more like optional because we've got my retirement pay and she's got a job. Right. So I'm in that sort of like spouse kind of role that my wife was in for the 20 years that we're in the military together. Well, almost 20 for her anyway, where it's not my job isn't absolutely necessary. It's almost like a nice to have thing. The thing is, though, it's not, one of the lessons that I've learned in this whole journey, since retirement is, I've got lots of gas left in the tank. I got, and I can't just sit around and do nothing. It's boring. The whole illusion of wouldn't it be cool if you could just not go to work? It's not. It's I learned one of the my other guests on my show Her name was Loretta Bruning, and she talks about how we're very much similar in our brain chemistry. Our neurotransmitters are very similar to other mammals, and other mammals are herd animals, and so are we. Right? We've taken on those brains. Right? We have this new human brain, which is amazing. Right? It lets us do amazing crap that they can't do, but we still have those herd-like brains. So one of the big things was when we're not around other people, we start feeling like, I got to get out of the house. This low level, I don't know why, but I'm just feeling bothered by being in this house alone. That is a big deal. And it just comes from that it's the same idea that a gazelle doesn't want to get too far away from his herd, because if he does, he might get eaten by a lion. It's almost the same sort of feeling. So anyway, there's that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of research behind that proves all of that as well. And I am in the same situation as you are in my post-military and being retired. And, the only reason why I still work is because the job is optional, but not here in Hawaii. And that's the other thing. But regardless, I've always, I just have to stay busy. I have to be doing something. And I did take, even when I retired, I took 4 months off and did absolutely nothing other than take my kid to school, come home, work out, take Tracy to a movie, or we'd go eat lunch or something like that. But I'm always engaged in some sort of extra activity.
Yeah.
Like
a podcast.
Yeah, like a podcast. And I wished I was doing the podcast. I wished I knew about it back then, because I could have certainly had the time to do it then. But, that's everything works out for a reason, right?
Oh, yeah. So now, we're actually getting excited because my wife was like, I'm kind of with you. This was probably like right before the 4th of July. So real recent, like. She's like, I'm with you. I kind of want to get out of LA. So what do we got to do? What's the next step? Where should we go? And so she was talking about, well, we have friends in Phoenix, we have friends in Vegas, we have friends in Tucson. So that's kind of like where the conversation started, right? So we both got excited and we're like, yay, we're moving. And then I started looking for jobs. And but now I've kind of landed on if I'm going to get a job, it would be really cool if I could get like a GS job with the federal government again, because then you can travel. We could go back to Japan on orders. We could go back to Germany or England or somewhere cool overseas and kind of start the adventure that we had together in the military and just do that again until, I'm too old for real to keep doing it. Yeah. So then the other thing that I'm looking at is, I don't know where you're at on this, but I've been doing like Motley Fool style investing for forever, since like, I'd have to think about it. Since like 90, I think I got into it really hard and heavy, like 98, 99 time frame. But ever since then, it was always just like following their rules or, getting into their what started out as being their newsletter services where they would give you stock picks and strategies. And it was always like long term, right? But you're investing to make money for retirement, essentially, right? So all of your bets are buy and hold, and none of the money that you're making is intended to be spent today. You're not making money to buy gas or groceries. You're making money to just leave alone, right? Yeah. So that has been my strategy since, like I said, it's like 98 or something. So just recently, I got another email from the Motley Fool guys, and they're like, oh, by the way, there's this thing called options, right? And I'd always like, that's too much work, right? You have to spend a lot more time actually looking at your investments instead of just sort of like fire and forget, like buy and hold. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. But then they were like, if you can use these strategies to make money now, for bread and groceries and gas. And I'm like, So anyway, that's another thing that I'm looking at now. So I just I signed up for their the Motley Fool's option service, and just to see if it's something that I want to do to make that shoe money. That's what I call it. Mama needs a new pair of shoes. It's something I can do from home, or anywhere.
Agreed.
In a truck by the beach.
Yeah, which is my type of income. I was on their list many years ago, and I was introduced to them somehow through one of the books I was reading or something like that. And then I just kind of jumped off their list, but I still see them around once in a while. And I'm like, man, those guys are still around, and they always gave good information. I just never really acted on any of it. So we'll certainly talk more about that, either on a personal level or have you back on the show. And I have a community associated with Men of Abundance that I would love to introduce some of that stuff to as well.
I can talk about it from the perspective of the lazy master sergeant, because that was right. It's like the minimal amount of work that you could conceive of and still make money. Nice. For the buy and hold long-term strategy. And then I could, if you want, I can tell a story about how I sort of tripped over what I like to call a financial black swan, where, let's see here. I read a book. It was the Tony Robbins Make Money book.
Yeah, I have it.
That came out last year. Yeah. So he suggested in there that you reallocate a big chunk, like 40% or more of your whole asset allocation to long-term government stocks, right? Or long-term government bonds. Sorry, completely opposite.
Yeah.
So I did that last year. I don't know, probably just about a year ago, right? It was almost like to the day of, let's see here, just a couple weeks ago. So just about a year ago. Mm-hmm. So anyway, then the Brexit thing happens, right? And everybody in the market freaks out right at Brexit, right? And I'm looking at this it was one exchange traded fund. It was EDV, which is the long-term government bond thingy from Vanguard, okay? And it had gone up crazy. It was like plus $50,000. And I'm like, man, I should sell that. Yeah. Because I'm never going to see that. I mean, the whole idea of buying that is that's not going to happen, right? You get that. It's just supposed to hold value. That's all it's supposed to do. And because of Brexit and then this other weird thing, the Fed kept saying that they were going to increase interest rates. Every time they came out and talked, they said, we're going to increase interest rates. And they never did. So people kept buying this thing. So I sold mine. I took my gains and I was like, I'll get back. But that's one of those once in a lifetime opportunities that, I'm going to cash in on.
Yeah, that was a good call. That's one reason I've read many books. I've got Tony Robbins' Make Money book. It's sitting on my coffee table. I have not read it yet, partly because I'm mostly into audio, and I've been waiting to get the audio book. But, just the whole investing thing is the way it's always been presented to me and the way I've always seen it. And I've known day traders that literally showed me how they were making cash, like hand over fist, day trading, but they were putting so much time into it, and I just don't have that kind of time to put into it.
No, I would never do that.
Yeah, but it's a gamble. To me, it was always gambling.
It is gambling
because that could have gone the other way.
You're right.
Completely the other way.
You're right.
And you're fortunate that it didn't.
Well, in a buy and hold situation, your take on it went down is that's okay. Mm-hmm. That's what it's supposed to do.
Of course.
The market fluctuates. As long as you don't sell, it'll probably come back, is the theory anyway. And that usually pans out. And the other side of that is most of my bets are tiny, tiny bets, like, 2, 3, 4% of the whole pie.
Got it.
It is one stock, kind of thing.
Okay.
So this big piece of pie was basically the safety net. Long-term government bonds, it's basically like they don't really pay anything. They pay like $1 dividend once a quarter. So, you get a little bit of dividend income. But other than that, they're about as boring as they get as far as investment goes. So anyway, Yeah.
So anyway, let's back up a little bit. So
sure.
We kind of got into it a little bit, but we really didn't get into exactly what is Vroom Vroom Veer. What is this all about?
Vroom Vroom Veer is like what we're talking about now. It's like the Vroom Vroom idea is when it's a metaphor for life, really. So Vroom Vroom means you're like on fast forward in life. Mm-hmm. You know, you've made a decision and you're just sort of like going fast. You know, you're busy and things are going well. In a bad way, you could say you're kind of sleepwalking through life, you know, and overall things may be good or bad, but you're just kind of like got your blinders on, your head down, and you're focused, right? And then something happens, and you have to change everything about your life, and that would be a veer. So it's about slowing down so you don't crash as much, you know. So when we talked about it with the branding folks, we called it what the kernel that started the conversation that led to Vroom Vroom Veer was. I said what I really want. I was talking to Michael O'Neill in that class, right? And we were talking about what I was calling my midlife crisis, right? And he said, "Oh, you mean you got a divorce, you married a 20-something-year-old girl with fake boobs, and you got a sports car, right?" And I'm like, no, not that midlife crisis. I'm talking about my midlife crisis. You know, it was like I went to school and I did all these veers, you know, and I, you know, quit my job that paid 6 figures. And he's like, well, that was stupid. I'm like, it kind of was. Yeah, right. But I felt like I needed to do it anyway. And he's like, so when I told that story to the branding guys, they're like, oh, so you're sort of like midlife non-crisis. And I'm like, right. How to take the crisis out of midlife. That's what Vroom Vroom Veer is about. If that makes sense.
That does make perfect sense. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm liking what I'm seeing over there on your site and what I've heard from your show so far.
Yeah. Really it's cool. Fun. It's just supposed to be conversations, less interview, you know?
Yeah.
And getting real and authentic and talking about stuff people usually don't talk about on shows.
Yeah, I dig it. I really like it. So, you ready to pay it forward?
I am ready to pay it forward. Let's pay it forward.
Awesome. Let's do that. Men of Abundance, one thing I want to point out that you may have noticed amongst all of the guests that I've had on the show so far is all of them have some sort of daily habits that they follow, myself included. In fact, for the last 5 years, one of my daily habits that I have not missed is drinking a dense nutrition shake every single morning after my workout. I had never been a fan of any protein shakes or nutrition shakes or nutrition drinks or anything of that nature. I did get into smoothies at one time, but making smoothies, quite frankly, is very expensive and very messy in most cases. But about 5 years ago, my doctor told me that I had to do something about my cholesterol. Ironically enough, as it happens, divine intervention, call it what you want, I was introduced to this dense nutrition shake that completely turned my cholesterol around. On top of that, I had more energy, my esophageal reflux went away, my chronic joint pain wasn't nearly as bad, and I shed some weight, all within the first 28 days. I can talk all day long about what just 30 days of this dense nutrition shake will do for you. But until you try this stuff out yourself, you're going to continue to be as skeptical as I was. The cool thing is you can try Shakeology with absolutely no risk whatsoever. There's a bottom of the bag, 100% 30-day money-back guarantee. That means you can consume the entire 30-day bag, and if you don't see or feel the difference in your body, or you otherwise just are not completely satisfied, you can send the empty bag back and get all of your money back, no questions asked. And there are multiple different flavors you can try. Now, my favorite flavor is the greenberry and the strawberry. My wife loves the vanilla, and we both like the cafe latte. There's also chocolate, and there's also a vegan chocolate and a vegan tropical strawberry. And there are even sample packs so you can try the various flavors. So to learn more about the benefits of Shakeology, go to menofabundance.com/resources, or just go to menofabundance.com, click on the resources tab, scroll down to the health and nutrition part, and you're going to see the Shakeology tab. Click on that, take a look, and if you have any questions whatsoever, get a hold of me. I'll be happy to help. All right, let's get back to the show.
So you had 3 action steps, right?
Yeah, so give...
Men of Abundance can take today.
Yeah, absolutely. Give Men of Abundance 1 to 3 steps that Men of Abundance can take
today. I've got 3, but they're all short.
Perfect.
Okay. So number 1 is floss. Because regardless of what you believe, you're going to need to eat. And to eat, you need teeth. And to keep your teeth, you need healthy gums. So floss. Number 2 is meditate. I don't do this as often as I should. It's mostly walking and yoga for me. But meditation, if I was to say like tomorrow, win the lottery and get 20 million or 10 million or even 1 million, I've already decided that I would make a charitable trust and dedicate it all to like some sort of like supporting mindfulness education, because I think it's probably the one thing we could all do more of. And it would make the world a better place. And then the last one is move. We're not trees, and we're not planted in the ground, or we're not meant to be like sitting on couches watching rectangles. So I've been doing yoga now for like 2 years, and it used to hurt to get out of my car, and I didn't think anything was wrong. And since I've been doing yoga, it's now I can like squat forever. I can drive from here to Tucson and it doesn't really bother me anymore. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, yoga is amazing. And that's one of those things that I'm an insanity guy, and I used to be an insanity.
Oh, wow.
I was teaching insanity at Honolulu Club, as a matter of fact, for a while. And I used to do a lot of free classes, and I love that type of intense workout. But once I broke it down and started doing a little bit of Pilates and yoga,
right,
my endurance increased and my strength got better, and I just felt better. But it's just so slow for me. And I know there's different types of yoga, so I have to force myself to get into it. And once I get into it, I'm good, and I just feel so much better the next day. And I'm like, why don't I do this more often?
Yeah, it's weird. I think, and I like to get your take on this, but like, my yoga instructor and I talk about this quite a bit, is like something's been perverted about the fitness movement, in that like things like, what did they call it? Like insanity and, what's the other one I'm trying to think of? PX90
P90X, yeah.
P90X. Mm-hmm. Those are all different ways to sell the idea of you being sexy. Mm-hmm. Right? And, that can be a happy consequence. But when you make it the number one goal, then I think it gets a little weirded out, because you get this body that looks amazing, but you still might not be able to move without a whole lot of pain. Right? So my idea is whatever your movement practice is, be that yoga, Pilates, whatever, make it up, its goal should be for you to move in your body without pain.
Yeah. That's that's absolutely a very good point.
Sexy. Yeah.
That's a very good point. And here's the answer to that. My answer anyway. This is I've been partnered with Beachbody, who's the maker of all those programs, for goodness, like 5 years.
Right.
And they have everything from Tai Chang, which is Dr. Chang doing Tai Chi. Tony Horton's really big. He's the trainer behind P90X. Mm-hmm. And he's really into yoga and Pilates and stuff. And then you got Shanti with the Insanity, and you've got Sagi Kalev with the Body Beast and bodybuilding, and you've got the whole Les Mills Pump folks out there. They're all in there as well. And here's the thing. You see the infomercials and all that stuff, and they're selling look sexy, look hot, all this other kind of stuff. The thing that makes the real difference is, the movement and everything, but it's the meal plans that are associated with it, and with any program, with anything. I don't care if it's CrossFit, whatever it is. Health and fitness is 80% nutrition and about 20% movement. But here's when you get into the programs and you talk to people like Tony Horton and Shanti, and I've talked to these guys one-on-one, face-to-face, and even Tony Horton will say, I don't get a 50-some-odd-year-old guy trying to do something like Body Beast and build muscle and stuff when he was younger and he was getting into fitness and stuff like that, it was all about looking sexy, looking hot, getting the girls.
Right.
Now he's 57, going on 58.
Right.
And now it's all about, I just want to freaking feel good.
Right. That's what it should be.
That's
right.
why I eat well. That's why I
Yeah.
move every single day. And he's been dubbed one of the healthiest men in the United States. I don't know about the world, but he's been in several magazines. But when you have that one-on-one conversation with him, it's not about looking high. And that's where I've evolved, because when I first started several years ago, for me, it was to improve my health. But then I got sucked into the whole, let's all look good and let's all not be fat and all this kind of stuff. And it's not as much about body composition as it is just about feeling good. And being able to, I got a 6-year-old. I want to be able to run around with him. And God willing, I want to be able to run around with my grandkids. Yeah,
you want to be able to live your life and not, end up, stuck in a bed.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I work in a hospital. And you see 70-year-old people come in there all the time, and you'll see some with walkers, and you'll see some skipping.
Right. That's on you. It's your job.
Yeah,
to do
and all you
that.
have to do is ask them, what makes the difference between these two people? Well, this one was sedentary most of their life and didn't eat very well. And this one ate mostly healthy, like I do. I eat mostly healthy. I don't eat always healthy, but mostly healthy. And they moved. Yeah. They paddleboarded. They surfed. They walked.
What I like to say is instead of trying to come up with a program or another book or another diet plan, just, think about eating clean, and that can mean different things to different people, but mostly it just means don't eat things that come in bags or packages.
Absolutely perfect. Absolutely. And, there's some changes, there's some stuff out there that, that does well with that, but for the most part, that is a very basic rule to live by. So, speaking of that, what daily habits make the biggest impact in your life?
So, I think, and we can get into this forever because I've got so many good ones that I've stolen from all the podcasters, but I think the ones that I'm really sticking to, even though, it kind of changes based on what I've got going on, but the number one for me is good sleep, sleeping well. Mm-hmm. So that is a whole, topic on its own, but I've gotten really good at it. I've got my my little routine, my go to bed routine, and my little night light, and I commit to getting in darkness a certain number of hours before I want to go to sleep. So I think that's huge for me. And then the other one that I really have committed to hard and heavy is from Tim Ferriss, and that was nail breakfast. So to me, it's like coffee, some sort of veggies, lots of eggs, and some sort of bacon. Mm-hmm. It's almost like every day. It's every weekday, And now on the weekends, I mess around a little bit and have some bread and, and cheat just because you can, Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I just do, because I miss bread, during the week. So, but yeah, nailing breakfast I think is big. And then for lunch I try to stick to like salads and stuff. Trader Joe's makes some really great salads, and they're only like $4 a piece. They make great lunches.
As awesome as Hawaii is, we do not have Trader Joe's out here. So every time we get to Vegas, we stock up.
Yeah. Bummer.
Yeah. So real quick, what book would you recommend to Men of Abundance based on some of what we talked about today?
I've just read 3 books that kind of continue to change my life. So have you ever read 48 Laws of Power?
I have not.
By Robert Greene. Check that out. It's a really good book. It's kind of like Machiavelli. Have you ever heard of him? He was like the end justifies the means, like the sort of like how all those evil people on the Game of Thrones are going about their business, and it would probably appropriately describe people in power, even on the planet today. It's like the rule book for being evil and in power, but it makes the world it makes sense. Like, they're not telling the truth and they've got a hidden agenda. Oh yeah, that's one of the power laws here.
Imagine that, really?
Right, yeah, right. So they, it's like, every law power law has its own aha moments that are described throughout history. It's amazing. I'm going to reread it. It was so good. So that one is a must read for me. And then there's these two books. One was called Fooled by Randomness, and the other one was called Black Swan by Nicholas Taleb. Those are really good books too. And that's kind of like more on those power laws, but this is kind of like the fallacy of the financial world and why we have these meltdowns, blow-ups, and bailouts. Perfect. It's kind of like shortcutting those, but there's a lot in there. And funny too.
Okay, and I'll have those books in the show notes of this show. So all you have to do is go to menofabundance.com and search Jeff, and that the episode will pop up. So, cool. As you know, because I sent you the show notes, Men of Abundance at the end of our 12-month anniversary, what revenue we do have, a portion of it will be going to various charities. And I always allow my guests to mention a charity that you resonate with and that you like to support, and we would be giving on your behalf.
I like Charity Water.
I love Charity Water.
There you go. Yeah, so they help folks that don't have clean water all around the world get clean water. So they've got projects all over, so you can check out more about Charity Water at charitywater.org. So, yeah, I like to give them guys money.
So I got one more question for you before we close this up.
Okay.
And that is, what does living a life of abundance mean to you, Jeff?
I definitely believe abundance as a principle, right? When you look at the universe, it doesn't, we can't even see it all. It's like there's more than enough everywhere, and you don't need to have any sort of woo-woo. You can just go look at Neil deGrasse Tyson on YouTube. He's not religious, not woo-woo at all, and he'll say that abundance is the universe. The universe is abundant. It's like there's more than enough everywhere for everybody. So anytime you see scarcity, there must be one of those power laws going on, right? Absolutely. It's like, it's just made up. But the other thing is for me, and I don't know what your take is on this, is I always like to apply abundance to time. And feel time abundant. And I know this has a downside because there's this whole other very popular notion of your life is on fire and you need to treat every moment as if it were like an expendable resource. And whenever I get that feeling in me, I don't feel abundant anymore, and I feel rushed and hurried, and I don't do quality work anymore. So when I want to do quality work, I usually think I have all the time I need, and my time is abundant, and I usually do better work. If that makes any sense.
It does make sense. It does make sense, and there's a lot of different thought processes on that, which we don't have time to get into in this show. But yeah, that does make sense to me, and there's definitely a contrast to that.
Right.
And that's why there's always so many shows or so many people, and they'll put a deadline. You're like, why do they put such a stringent deadline on themselves?
Right.
They did that themselves. But there's a lot of reason behind that. That's for people who don't get stuff done. And if you put a timeline on it, then you will get it done in that same timeline. But will it be quality? And that's what you're getting at.
Right.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So leave us with some parting piece of guidance and any way that we can get a hold of you.
Okay. So parting piece of guidance would be gentle and nice to you. I think we always beat up ourselves more than we ever, we judge ourselves more harshly than others. Always. Right? So if you think of it, be nice to yourself. And if you want to reach me, the easiest thing to do is remember VVEER.com. It's VVVEER.com. That's my shortcut domain to vroomvroomveer.com. So if you put that in, it's easy to remember, VVEER.com. And there's my website. There's me grinning like an idiot. And you can see all my shows and listen and hang out.
Perfect. Hey, in Men of Abundance, I'm going to have all of that in the show notes, so don't worry about trying to write this down and jot it down and keep it to memory if you're driving or something like that. It'll all be in the show notes, so go check that out at menofabundance.com, and then in the search bar, you'll be able to just type Jeff, and it will pop right up. All right, Jeff, man, what a great conversation. I had a lot of fun on this show, and I look forward to talking with you more and possibly having you back on the show at a later time to talk more about the investments and everything else you have going on.
Cool. Thanks, Wally. This was a blast.
Awesome. Have a good day, man.
Take it easy.
That's all for today, Abundance Leaders. For more about our guests and the powerful information we shared with you today, be sure to sign up for our mailing list at menofabundance.com. We appreciate your time and look forward to hanging out with you on our next episode. So until then, be sure to pay it forward and live your life of abundance.